Well, at the tail end of yesterday's video, I noted that I was a little bit worried for the stretch of the last 3 episodes of Arcane. Turns out I was right to be. Arcane, Season 2, final stretch of 3 episodes. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. And I've had tail ends of shows make me mad. Game of Thrones was a disaster. Dexter, that thing's original finale made me furious. I'm not above getting mad at bad conclusions. But the thing is, this isn't even bad. Wow, is it rushed? What this is a failure of pacing and scale. We went from a season of television, an almost impeccable season of television, focused on the core intercharacter dynamics of a handful of people in, yes, a very large, expansive world that clearly had a lot of other stuff going on beyond these people, but we always stuck to the individuals. The characters were what made me care, and the characters felt like they were being shuffled towards the exit. I have not looked too deep into it, but I have read a couple of interviews just to confirm, because I saw somebody in the comments, I might have been on the previous video, or it might have been the one I did on the first 3 episodes. I did see somebody say, like, oh, they originally had planned to do 5 seasons. That was reported in Variety a little while back. That turned out to not be true, or at least, if it ever was true, they're now pretending that it wasn't. The folks behind it are saying that this was always meant to be 2 seasons, which I think I do believe insofar as how long they've spent on this. Like, they spent years and years and years on both of these. So I could buy that they only wanted to do 2 seasons, because doing 3 probably would have meant another 3 to 4 years of work. So if they want to move on and do something else, even if it is set in the same universe, I get capping it at 2. I do absolutely believe that this was the ending they intended, because I don't think there's anything wrong with the ending. I mentioned Game of Thrones. The thing about the ending of Game of Thrones was that a lot of the decisions made felt fundamentally at odds with how we even understood these characters. Now, that's not to say that there couldn't have been ways to get the characters to where they were when the thing ended, but because they didn't take the time to do it, in the case of that show, it felt like fundamental betrayals of who these people even were. They did it to Jaime. They did it to Daenerys. They did it to the Hound. Like, they rolled back character development. They reversed who these characters even were in the final stretches of the show. And again, not in ways that could not have been reconciled through more time, but they just didn't take it. That's not quite what's going on here. Everything that the characters do, I buy. Nobody is acting in a way fundamentally disconnected from who I understood them to be. So that, at least, is not the problem. That having been said, especially compared to the first season, they speed ran these people to their conclusions. And also, as I kind of noted last time, it feels like this is not a story of characters anymore. Characters have instead become the way through which we experience a story of events. And that is not a problem in and of itself. Plot-driven, event-driven storytelling is fine. It can be excellent. And you can even have a story over time shift from a more character-focused to a more event-focused kind of storytelling. That often happens on a longer timeline if you are increasing the scale and the scope of the story as you go, but you do have to take your time to do that. I'm sorry I keep coming back to Game of Thrones, but this felt like Season 1 of Arcane felt more than a little analogous to Season 1 of Game of Thrones, in that it was tightly focused on the interactions of characters and people as larger events happened around them. But you would always go to the characters first. If you were to describe what was great about that show first, you're going to talk about the characters. And then season 2 of Arcane felt like jumping from season 1 of Game of Thrones to season 6. Jumping from a story where we follow people and families and dig into their motivations and watch how things impact them with a general sense of greater things cooking in the background, to immediately jumping to, here's all these mystical beings just wandering around and directly interacting with things, and here's the dragons, and here's the major machinations. And if you jump from one to the next, it feels like you've kind of lost the characters a bit, or at the very least, they are now in service of the events rather than the events being an outcropping or simply a setting to explore them. I can look at characters like, okay, you know what? What was her name? Maddie? I'm going to talk spoilers, by the way. Maddie, the one who, betrayed Caitlyn. I didn't care. I should. I should care about a betrayal. But I didn't. Because it didn't even feel like something the character did. It felt like a thing the writers did to ensure that she wouldn't be around to complicate the reunion of Vi and Caitlyn. And yes, the two of them in the prison cell was very hot. It was. There are still good moments. There's still good scenes. And visually, it is freaking gorgeous. This show is visually astounding. So I will not knock it for that. Pretty much everything I'm talking about here is writing. And it's not even bad writing. It's just rushed writing. It just feels like we leapt to the climax so fast. Like, okay. Climax of season 1. The climactic scene, not the literal last scene, but the climactic scene happened around a dining room table where most of the people there were restrained and couldn't even move. And this gave us, instead, this epic extended battle where multiple characters who I barely knew died. And the few that I did care about who died, it felt like their death was just something in service of getting the story wrapped up, rather than a natural outcropping. I was way more impacted by Silco dying in the previous season, and I recognized he was an absolute piece of garbage. It wasn't like I mourned him as a character. He was a horrible human being. He should have died. But I was more impacted by his death than any death, or supposed death. Some of these, who knows? But any death that happened in season 2. This second season, that I know I'm rambling. Like, I'm gathering I think I'm gonna have to do a full video, like properly breaking all this down on the main channel. And some of it's gonna be reiterative of what I'm saying here right now, but you're kind of getting it raw at the moment. Maybe I could have worded that better. But last season, the characters of Milo and Clegor, I can't remember the other one's name. I'm bad at names. I think I've mentioned that every single one of these reviews for the second season. But the two friends of Vi and Powder, who died in the explosion that Powder set off. When those two died, that tore at me. And they were only in 3 episodes. When you had characters like the big guy with the shield, whose name I don't even really remember, died in the last episode, I felt nothing. When Maddie, who had been around for about the same amount of time, betrayed Caitlyn, I felt nothing. And it wasn't because they were worse characters. It was because season 2 is so event-driven. The reason I cared about those two in the first season is because, yes, there were events going on around them, but I also got to just spend time with them. I got to see them in downtime. I got to see what their lives were and why they were worth caring about by just seeing them exist at all. Not because they were immediately thrown into a bomb goes off in their face. the connection that I made between we took the time to just spend with characters and let events move usually when the characters initiated them in season 1 versus just having to hang on to these characters for dear life as they are pulled through this narrative in season 2. It was jarring in a bad way. And again, I don't think any of these plot developments are actually bad. These are not bad creative choices. But if you were going to end in these big epic movements where suddenly mages that were barely brought up and vaguely hinted at in season 1 and all this other stuff are like all major movers and shakers in this, and we're dealing with literal world-ending threats, which again, I understand was hinted at that Hex Tech could be that dangerous in season 1, but leaping right to that in season 2, as opposed to getting us there over time, hurts the narrative, especially because I have that first season to compare it to and just see how much better it was. The only reason I'm not just going to put my foot down and say you should have taken more seasons is because these people do not owe me more years of their lives. This is an if. I don't know if this is the case, but it did kind of have the tone to some of the quotes I saw from some of the creators behind it. If they need a break from this, fair. You don't owe me your time and work. But still, at the end of the day, if I'm just evaluating the finished work as a finished work, this second season was just in a dead sprint the entire time. And again, when I think about the actual plot events, they're good. The whole notion of the time loop and the way that expanded out, and we realized that it's Victor was the one who actually helped Jace way back. That's great. That's great. That's wonderful. That's a terrific idea. It didn't hit as hard as it should have because I barely had time to breathe getting there. Frustrating. This was frustrating. Not bad, but frustrating. And maybe if I was more of a lore person, I wouldn't have these complaints. Like the notion of a small story in a big world, that was the driving philosophy behind my own novel, and the first season of Arcane felt like that. It felt like it was dealing with stories that were incredibly important to the people involved, and maybe down the line might cascade into bigger events, but for the most part, these are not people who will be remembered by history. This world is so much bigger than most of the characters that were in there. But now, season 2, they're all the movers and shakers of the entire fate of the universe. The narrative universe, I mean. And the ones who aren't feel relegated to the background. As triumphant as it was for Echo to show up at the end and do the whole time loopy bit thing, I'd kind of forgotten he was in the show. I'd forgotten that a couple times, actually. Frustrating. That's it. I got to refine these thoughts and put something together. But for right now, I don't know. I don't know what I gotta. I got work to do, unfortunately. I gotta edit this. That's what I gotta do. But anyway, Arcane, last stretch of season 2. My gut instinct is people are going to be really annoyed at the fact that I don't like it. They're going to dispute with me the reasons that I don't like it. But I also have a feeling that I'm going to get vindicated with time on this. I don't know, though. We'll see. Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills. That helps me do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. They all help as well. Don't worry too much about it, though. We try and take a relaxed attitude around here. Just come on back next time you need a break. And now I'd like to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Goddess Elida, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Renabi Likes the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Adam RDL Taylor, Pal Barabajago, Mira G, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. They're all calmer this time because they're eating papaya. Whatever works.